Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name's Wraith, and today I'm going to be going over how to play the Return of the King, the Legendary Legion. Now, before on my channel I have covered how to defeat the Legendary Legion, but not how to play it, which is weird because it's actually one of my favourite factions to play. It's my go-to faction for events and I do quite well with it. So yeah, I thought I'd make things right and do this video. Now, let's go over what the Legendary Legion is. So, basically, it's a thematic legion like all the Legendary Legions for when the three hunters jump off the side of the Corsair's ship and beat up Mordor and all that good stuff in the Battle of Pelennor Fields. And I just love the scene, so as soon as they released this, I was like, yep, this is for me. So, obviously, we're going to have Strider. Strider has to be your army leader, okay? Which makes sense, he's the heir of Isildur, so yeah. Then we need to include the King of the Dead. These are absolutely musts. You have to bring these two characters, which is absolutely fine because they work very well together. Now, you can bring Legolas and Gimli, and they can lead Warriors of the Dead and Riders of the Dead in this army list. So that's very nice. That's very nice. But what else? There's I'll go over everything, and then I'll go down through the the bad points first. I like doing it bad points and then end with good notes. So we've got Aragorn Strider, 160 points, and he's got Elven Cloak. He does get Anduril, Flame of the West, for free, which is fantastic. Anyway, we've got Legolas Greenleaf, 100 points, give him armor, Elven Cloak, both 5 points. Gimli, Son of Gloin, 100 points, Elven Cloak, 5 points. King of the Dead, 100 points. Herald of the Dead, which is he's not new anymore, but he comes with the Gondor at War supplement. But he is 75 points with the shield, so it's 5 points for the shield. And of course, we've got the Warriors of the Dead at 14 points, who can bring banner, shield, spears. Banners staying the same at 25 points. Shield and spears are 1 point each. And then we can have a Rider of the Dead, 24 points. So, what else do we get with this? Well, you still keep the army bonus that the army did have, which is the king has the Harbinger of Evil special rule, so 12-inch -1 courage, which works fantastic with these boys because they've got Blades of the Dead. If you don't know what Blades of the Dead does, is basically your ghosty boys who have the special rule, including the king and the herald and the riders, everyone, attack the enemy's courage rather than their defense. So you go with your strength against their courage. So basically, if he's around, they're -1 defense. Now, fight for us, regain your honor. Okay, spirit models from this army list count as being in range of a banner if Aragorn is within 6 inches. So boom, we got a free 6-inch banner. Well, he's not free, he's 160 points. So speaking of which, let's go over the profiles. So, Strider, he is a hero of valor. Okay, he is move 6. Everyone's move 6 in this, so I'm not going to say it again. Apart from horses, obviously. He is fight 6, which is awesome. He has a shoot value of 3+, strength 4, defense 5, 3 attacks, 3 wounds, courage 6. He's got 3 might, 3 will, and 3 fate. He comes with a whole range of heroic actions. Resolve, march, very important. Accuracy, strike, very important. Strength is good, defense is fantastic, and heroic challenge is no. And he comes equipped, obviously, you get the lightsaber for free, Anduril. So it is a elven made hand-and-a-half sword. Additionally, you never require more than a 4 to wound. Note, if you two-hand with a weapon, you still get the +1, so you'll never need more than a 3+ to wound. Very, very good. He has Horse Lord and Mighty Hero. Mighty Hero is very important. You get a free point of might at the start of each turn, and they don't stack, so you can't just sit there and get 7 might points. But what that essentially means is you're never going to run out of might. We'll go over all that good stuff in a minute. Legolas Greenleaf, okay? He is a hero of valor as well. He is fight 6, 3+ shoot value, strength 4, defense 4, 2 attacks, which is horrendous, 2 wounds, courage 6, 3 might, 2 will, 3 fate. And of course he's got heroic accuracy and heroic strike. He's got elven made daggers and an elf bow. Okay, he's got his super shot ability where basically You get to choose to make one single shot, and you always hit on a 2+ regardless of anything, and you don't take in the waves or anything like that, and you can pick if you shoot horse and rider. He's fantastic for dehorsing heroes. That's what I use him for. Or you can shoot 3 shots normally. And he's also got a special rule which is called Final Count 42. If Legolas and Gimli are in the same army, keep track of how many models they have both killed. If at any point Legolas has fewer kills than Gimli, then Legolas's shoot value is improved by 1, so he becomes 2+. Awesome. Gimli, son of Gloin, hero of Valor. So, he's move 5. Cool, I forgot about that. Fight 6, strength 4. He's got a 4+ shoot value, because he can throw axes. He is defense 8, which is fantastic. 2 attacks, 2 wounds, courage 6, 3 might, 2 will, 2 fate. Now, he comes with a Master Forge, 2-handed axe, 2 axes, and throwing axes, and of course his heavy dwarf armor. He's got strike and strength for his heroics, and basically you get to pick which axes you use. So if you use the 2 axes, you get +1 attack, and if you... yeah, that's pretty much it. If you use 2 axes rather than the Master Forged 2-handed axe, you get an extra attack rather than the +1 to wound. What is also fantastic is he's got the same rule as Legolas pretty much. I myself am sitting pretty on 43, where he just gets a flat +1 to wound. That's insane. That's close combat, but which means you can then switch to your 2 axes and be +1 to wound with an extra attack, or you can be +2 to wound with your Master Forged axe. So he's very, very good with Legolas. Now on to the King of the Dead. Okay, hero of Valor again. Okay, he is fight 5. Okay, strength 4, defense 8, 2 attacks, 2 wounds, courage 7. Okay, 1 might, but don't worry about that. It's usually that's rubbish, but it gets better. 6 will and 3 fate. 6 will is fantastic. He has armor and a sword, and he's got heroic march and strike. Heroic march again. I love heroic march and strike. My 2 favourites pretty much. Yeah, I don't know. Defense is fantastic as well. Obviously he's got Blades of the Dead, which I went over earlier, and he causes terror. Big point on that later. Drain Soul. Basically, if a model suffers an unsaved wound from the King of the Dead, so a hero can still use fate to try and prevent it, but if any single wound gets through, they are automatically slain. That is nuts. Okay, because he's got 2 attacks, so most of the big things that can't be one-shotted, they just go down to half their health. If you manage to sneak 2 wounds in with the King of the Dead, which I have done to things like the Balrog, you one-shot them essentially. It's absolutely disgusting, but it's fantastic for killing eagles, trolls, things like that. Ents, it's insane. The Living and the Dead. Only warriors and riders of the dead may use his standfast or benefit from his heroic actions. That's fair enough. And basically, goes across for all the warriors of the dead. You've got Spectral Walk, where you can walk over water features as if they are open ground, which has come up twice in tournaments for me, where I could just walk over a river, which was quite nice. The last hero option we have is the Herald of the Dead. Okay, he is a hero of Fortitude. He is fight 4, strength 4, defense 7, but of course you're going to give him a shield to make him that sweet, sweet defense 8. 2 attacks, 2 wounds, courage 6, no might, 3 will, 2 fate. He's got armor, sword, and a Pennant of the Dead. So the Pennant of the Dead is basically a 3-inch aura that gives friendly spirit models the resistant to magic special rule. That's awesome. Really, really nice. So suddenly you've got a bunch of guys that can deny powers. You can give him a shield, like I said. He's got Blades of the Dead and Causes Terror. Spectral Walk, which I went over before. And he's got the King's Council. Fantastic rule. If the King of the Dead is within 3 inches of one or more heralds at the start of any phase, you can spend one of the herald's will points to declare a heroic action instead of spending his own might. Heralds of the Dead also benefit from the King of the Dead and the Living special rule. So you can't nick this guy's stand. So none of the 3 hunters can use his standfast, basically. Awesome. Absolutely fantastic. And I think, yeah, definitely an addition to an army. Something I definitely bring. Now, Warriors of the Dead. Expensive, but fantastic. Start at 14 points, like I said. They are only fight 3, okay? They're strength 3. They're defense 7. But of course you're going to whack a shield on them to make them defense 8. 1 attack, 1 wound, courage 6. Okay, you can give them either a sword or an axe, and they come with armor. Yeah, Blades of the Dead, Terror, Spectral Walk. That's all you really need to know about them. I'll go over all the in detail points in a minute. Riders of the Dead. They are 24 points, like I said, and of course they've got a 10-inch move because they're cavalry. But other than that, they're identical to the Warrior of the Dead profile, apart from they come equipped with a shield. And they've got a spectral steed, so it's not a normal horse. Its defense is still a spirit model, and it's got a defense of 6, which is insane for a horse. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So, now to tackle the bad points to running this Legendary Legion. The first big one is you have no way, really, to pressure your enemy with ranged attacks bar Legolas. If you don't bring Legolas, you won't have any. Obviously, Gimli's got thrown axes, but I'm not counting them, really, because 6 inches, Yeah, that's a big one. And the second big negative to this Legendary Legion is none of the... Well, Strider or Legolas cannot take a horse. Okay? That is really quite bad for Strider, who is an absolute monster on a horse, knocking people prone with 4 attacks on the charge, 8 wound rolls, all needing a 4+ to wound. I always run him on a horse in every other list I have him. The last tiny little one is you cannot take armor for Aragon. So, popping him up to defense 6, which is much better than defense 5, because strength 3, instead of needing 5s to wound, you need 6s. And strength 3 is obviously the most common strength value for troops. Even goblins are strength 3. And of course, the big glaring one is everything is very expensive in points. You are probably not going to outnumber your opponent unless they're running maybe Iron Hills or a monster list or a full hero list. But don't worry, you'll eat them. Okay, that's the negatives, right? Not too bad, eh? Positives. Okay, when I'm looking at competitive lists, I've got kind of like a check sheet of what I want the list to do. Okay? A big one is killing power. Okay? So things like +1 to wound or anything like that. Stuff that is really good at taking down other opponents. Now, with Blades of the Dead, it makes that absolutely insane. Okay? So, put this, for example, if I go against an Iron Hills shield wall, okay? So they're all defense 8, or the captain is defense 9. So we'll go off defense 8. I'm strength 3 with a ghost. Okay, usually that would be 6s by 4s to wound. No, not anymore. It is now 4s to wound. Because if they're near the King of the Dead, they're -1 courage. They're usually courage 4. They're down to courage 3. Same as my strength. I'm wounding Iron Hilled Walls on 4s. And this goes with normal draws of Khazad-dûm, Uruk-hai Berserkers, other things like that. Okay? So all these high defense armies that people sometimes struggle to punch through, you are just cutting them up like butter, whilst additionally hitting another one of my points, which is either one of the two, survivability or numbers. We've got survivability because we are also defense 8. I want to be able to kill the enemy easier than they are able to kill me. So being defense 8, whilst being able to wound most defense 8s on 4s is absolutely nuts. This also goes for mortal trolls. We're wounding them on 4s as well. Another favourite that you might come up against is Gulliver for Angmar. He's a very common one to see because of the amazing list that did so well. He is our top profile with 4 wounds, courage 4. So, -1. Yeah, he is courage 3, you're wounding him on 4s. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. He's usually defense 8, by the way. And the last one I want to mention is the Balrog. So, he's usually defense 9, right? He, for you, near the King of the Dead, is defense 6. Because he's courage 7 -1. So, that means it's 6s to wound for all your normal dudes, when it's usually 6s by 5s for strength 3. And for the King of the Dead, it's 5s. 5s to wound. And he's got his, double tap special ability. That is absolutely bonkers. Okay? Even 1 wound to take him to half is just, it gets rid of the new Depths of Moria Legendary Legion special thing where they can't be broken unless the Balrog's at half wounds. Just 1 wound from the King of the Dead. And of course, we've got access to elven-made weapons, which is fantastic. When you're striking up to fight 10 against the Balrog, you're more likely to win rather than it being a 50-50 chance of the Balrog winning. Yeah, so it's little things like that. Okay, so I think I've bigged this up quite a bit. Super tough troops, really a lot of killing power. We've also got access to cavalry, so we can be very mobile if we wish. We've got heroic march on 2 of the heroes that will definitely be in our list. One of them, who's got free might every turn. And that's the last thing I want to mention. You will never run out of might, and you have no idea how important that is in the end game. So late game, might reserves are running low for everyone usually. If you've got might and your opponent hasn't, you are going to walk all over them most of the time, because you can call heroic moves, you can call heroic combats, you can call heroic marches. You just shoot all over the place. It's fantastic. It's so key. We've got banner abilities, and it's almost worth being a banner of the dead, just so you can get the victory points if that scenario crops up. So yeah, so they're the good points. The list is bigger than the negatives, in my opinion. Right. So how do we actually play this bad boy? Now, it's quite obvious how you want to be playing them. As I play with most of my lists, I try and have a pretty solid core. So I try and fill out as much of the warbands as I can, get as many numbers on the field as I can. With Army of the Dead, it's not always necessary, because you're going to want to give all your Warriors of the Dead shields, okay? Even the Spear Boys, okay? Because I always go for the 50-50-ish ratio. It doesn't have to be bang on 50-50. It can be slightly under for the Spears, if you so wish. But you want Spear supports, because you don't want your opponent throwing more dual dice than you are. If you give them shields, so Defense 7, the difference between Defense 7 and Defense 8 is Strength 3 attacks will wound you on 6s for Defense 7. On Defense 8, they'll be wounding you on 6s, followed by a 4+. So once they actually roll a 6, there's a 50-50 chance whether they actually follow through with the wound. And to be honest, if I've got 15 Warriors of the Dead, I'd rather not have the extra guy and give them all an extra 15 guys or 14 guys a shield, okay? You want to include a minimum of 2 Riders of the Dead, okay? This is purely for countering enemy cavalry charges. So if something big and scary like Azog charges into Strider, you can chuck one of your cavalry into Azog and negate his cavalry bonuses for that charge, which will be massive for you. On the other thing they can do is objective grabbing. So you can shoot off with your cavalry. They're not really there if you've only got 2 to start like smashing into the enemy turn 2 or whatever. They're there to grab objectives later on, or try and hold an objective. So they're really good at that. I try to include more. I usually run to about 4 Riders of the Dead, because then I've got a solid amount to shoot off for objectives. I can counter enemy charges, and then I can start getting the flanks going. So flank charges, and you can start getting traps in and things like that, even with Army of the Dead. Yeah, okay. So they're the kind of like must-takes. If you've got... As for heroes, I would probably take Legolas over Gimli, just to make up for the lack of range you have, and so you can shoot horses off from under the enemy's heroes. Because, like I said, a cavalry charge is so massive, especially if you're going against like Rohan or something. You just snipe Theoden off his horse. That's it. You've slain everyone down, because they probably want to hang around with Theoden. Things like that. Yeah, it's massive. Absolutely massive. That's what he's there for. On top of that, he can also snipe banners. If you see opponent has accidentally left his banner not in base contact with one of his warrior models, and you never know, it might be a Haradrim banner or something like that. It's defense 3, take a pot shot. Even if he's not a Haradrim and he's got high defense, take a pot shot. It's definitely worth it, because if they're not getting banner rerolls and you are, it's incredible. Now, here we go. This is more the tactics side of things. So that's what you want to be bringing for your lists, or thereabouts, okay? I've never taken 3 hunters altogether, really, unless I play 1,000 points, and it's more for fun. I don't really play 1,000 points that often. So, when you go to an event, you've got to have in mind what kind of tactics and how to run this army. You can't just smash them in there. Sometimes that works, but sometimes it doesn't. The main reason it doesn't work, just ramming them into the enemy, is if you're heavily outnumbered, if you start getting trapped, you're probably going to lose. If you start getting enveloped, you're probably going to lose. We don't have high fight value. Fight 3 is not fantastic, okay? So you're not going to be winning on automatically rolling 6s like most other elite armies. We're going to have to stick together and kind of try and block and protect our flanks, which is why cavalry is important, because they can do this role. So there's a couple of formations you can run. So I call it the boar's head or the arrowhead, whatever you want to call it. So if your enemy looks like he's trying to envelop you and you've got an objective in the center that you're holding, you can then heroic march your way into an arrow's head. So it makes it much harder for the enemy to then start hitting you from behind or wrapping around you. That's one really key one. You can also do kind of like a crescent formation, also works. Okay, so that's for holding a single objective. For multiple objectives, what you're going to do is you're going to have a main core of your army. The main core is going to consist of Strider and the King of the Dead. These guys are the ones that are going to crash with the core of their army. You're going to try and engage as many people with these guys as you can, and this is just going off basic objectives. You just want objectives, and you're not horrifically outnumbered, so you're fighting something like Moran and Orcs that aren't too cheap, but are still relatively cheap. They are there to basically win the fight and start taking out the opponent's troops, whilst you can send a couple of squads of guys with cavalry, if need be, to shoot off and start sitting on objectives and staying there with defense 8, and their job is to just shield. Okay. Which can definitely make you sit there, especially if you're not giving away many victory points, because it's a lot harder to break you, get broken than you think, especially at defense 8 and really high courage. And then in generic, just kill the opponents. Obviously you're just going to stay in one continuous battle line and smash face with the enemy. One more thing is you are really good at Contest of Champions, because Strider has got free might. What you want to do with Strider is charge into troops, heroic combat your way around, and rack up as many kills that way you can, because you've got the might for it. You can heroic combat and just keep heroic combating through and taking out opponent troops. Don't worry about that leader at this point, because the whole point of the scenario is to rack up the most amount of kills. If you can snipe the enemy hero, fantastic. If not, never mind. Speaking of heroes, this is one big point. Right, I kind of mentioned it before, but here we go. This is the perfect setup, I find. If you're going against a high fight hero or someone you want to beat in a fight, so Azog, Bolg, Balrog, things like that, you've got Strider. Strider's got an Elven made hand and half sword. His job is to use his hand and half sword to win that fight, okay? You also want the King of the Dead in there with you, okay? If you've got them two combined, you then want a couple of warriors dead to try and trap your opponent, okay? Easier to trap the Balrog than it is Azog or Bolg, but if they're a little bit reckless with Bolg or Azog, you can do it. Once you've got that in place, it is really hard for you to lose. If it's like to the point where you have to kill this hero, so it's Azog, it's Contest of Champions, if you take him out, you've pretty much won the scenario. Strike with both your heroes. Always keep your Herald nearby, your King of the Dead, so you can use his will for the heroic action. Save the King of the Dead's might for his wound rolls. Okay, because there might be a time where you're wounding Azog on a 5, for example, whatever, and you roll a 4, and you can just flip that dice to a 5. If you strike with both of them, and it's so key, you've got a much higher chance of rolling that fight 10 or higher than Azog. If Azog is also 10, you've got a much higher chance of getting one of them to fight 10, and then you've got your Elven made bonus to swing the fight in your favour, because then evil only win on a roll of a 1 to a 1 or a 2, whilst you win on a 3+. If he's trapped, you've won, you've got him trapped, you're going to cut his head off. This works for the Balrog as well, of course, because if you trap the Balrog, suddenly the King of the Dead is rolling 4 dice and needing 5s to wound. Okay, on 4 dice, it's a good chance you can roll a 5 and a 4, use that point of might to flip it to a 5. The Balrog is down. One shot. You've got a banner reroll from Strider. Yeah. So this is the main way of taking out big, scary heroes on the opponent team. One last note on tactics for Army of the Dead. Now, we're rather weird because our entire army causes terror. This is humongous because sometimes it's not always the best. Like, if you win a priority roll, you get to charge and then your opponent gets to charge, okay? That's fine. That's always good. Everyone likes having priority. But on the flip side, if you lose priority and you cause terror with an 12-inch aura of -1 to courage, you're going against any evil faction, or even good faction, you then have the chance of kind of like, wow, you know where the fight's going to be. So if they try and charge you, and say 10 guys try to charge you, 4 of them pass their courage and charge it in your turn, you can just absolutely jump on them 4 guys and destroy them. So he's basically fed you 4 guys. So yeah, that's insane. It's really, really good. It's also very good at countering cavalry if you do lose priority, because if you do go against something like Rohan, and they're about to charge you, and they don't have bodyguard or whatever, just normal riders of Rohan, there's a good chance that they're going to fail their courage test. So they won't even get the cavalry charge off. And the ones that do make it in, you can just cut their heads off, and you can dictate the fights from there. So yeah, basically, to sum it all up, I think this is an absolutely fantastic force. I think it's very competitive, despite its downfalls, where you can't bring Strider on a horse and stuff like that. Some people absolutely disregard it because of that, but don't get me wrong, it's an extremely strong force in the right hands. But you do have to be clever with it. You can't just ram them in, like I said. Okay? I love them. I love playing them. I love the models. The whole reason I collected this army is because I love the scene, and I love the fact that I've got a load of ghosts as my army. That is so cool. So, anyway, if you think I've missed anything, or if you've got any questions, or if you want to tell me how fantastic my voice sounds, then do leave me a comment in the description, in the comment section down below, should I say. And if you like the video, do hit the like button, and if you're feeling especially generous today, do consider subscribing. But even if you don't do either of those things, I still hope you have an absolutely fantastic day, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye. If you truly have a saint's heart and want to help out the channel and myself to grow, then do consider becoming a Patreon for the minimum price of £3 a month. This will help me bring out bigger and better content for things like competitive battle reports, alongside list building and event coverages. The link is in the description down below, and join the Shadow Cult. Thank you ever so much, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.